Good morning. Welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host, Bob Irwin. I am here with my guest panel this week to talk about gun issues, firearms laws, self-defense rulings, things like that are of interest to gun owners and people that have concealed carry permits particularly. With me today, I am happy to have again Michael Giles, an attorney with Creed and Giles here in Las Vegas. To my right is attorney Clark Patrick, a defense specialist in murder cases, a firearms trainer, and another attorney, actually, Michael Potter, does firearms training for lots and lots of people, teaches CCW classes here, and also works in wealth management in his legal practice. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in this show. And my gunsmith and firearms trainer here, Tony D., who works here at the gun store and teaches our CCW classes and keeps our guns working. We were talking last week, and we ran out of time right at the end, and I'm glad to have these two attorneys back with us because I want to finish this. In last week's show, we talked about the Brady Center for Handgun Violence, or to prevent gun violence, has filed a lawsuit against this town called Nelson, Georgia, because they passed a city code that says that you must, if you're a citizen of the town, all 1,300 of them, have a firearm and ammunition in your home so you can come to the defense of the community. They put in some exceptions that if you're poor, if you are a conscientious objector to having firearms, so forth and so on, that there are exceptions. Everybody doesn't have to, but otherwise, you get a $1,000 fine if you don't have a gun and ammunition in your house somewhere. They are sued now by as I said, the Center for Gun Violence. But we talked about that last week, and I'm sure most of you heard what we were talking about. But the interesting issue that came right up at the end is the Brady Center is objecting to the law based on the fact that the town board cannot, as a government entity, force anybody to buy anything, that's against the Constitution. Aren't we in the midst of Obamacare?
I was going to say, that doesn't count. That's okay.
That's federal.
I've just had a whole bunch of employees forced to up their medical premiums that we were covering for them, and now we're not allowed to cover as much. They have to pay more. Mm-hmm. Under the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and it's a law that they must buy the insurance.
Well, if this ever got to the Supreme Court, which it could, because it implicates the Second and 14th Amendment and First Amendment, so it's federalizing the issue here, it could very easily run square into the decision the court just came up with on the Obamacare argument. And a lot of these arguments are, I would imagine, almost conceptually, word for word from what the anti-healthcare people were arguing. This ordinance strips Mr. Kelly of his right to determine how best to protect his home and compels him to take action and communicate with the public in a manner he doesn't want to. How about this, stripped Mr. Irwin of his right to decide what insurance to provide to his employees if he does or doesn't?
It's exactly parallel.
They're arguing both sides of the same coin.
Exactly.
Here.
So they're going to run into some issues with that.
Anyway, hopefully this thing will... Would it be amazing if this little town of 1,300 people overturned the Affordable Care Act? Wow, it's just possible. We can all dream. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to talk about a few other things. A couple of these things are just so outlandish to me. This is a story out of Associated Press on May 10th. Apparently, a movie theater chain operating in Missouri, Goodrich Capitol Theaters of Jefferson City specifically, was showing the premiere of Iron Man. And they decided as part of their premiere, they would have actors dressed as the Iron Man, an actor dressed as Iron Man's enemy, I guess, a guy in military fatigues with a rifle, charged through the theater, pointing guns at the other actors who are pretending to be characters from Iron Man. Really? Is this really a bright idea?
Yeah, especially today.
Yeah, well, especially after Colorado. I mean, if there's a CCW holder in that theater, he could have easily been
Engage them.
Yeah, absolutely.
He will blow away an actor. And
In the theater's defense, the firearms that were used were actually clear plastic airsoft guns. They didn't look particularly
In a
realistic.
nice darkened theater.
That's where the problem comes in, right?
And-
So somebody didn't work this
Wasn't
out
it
and say,
just-
what's it going to look like to the average person?
What was it, 2 days ago?
2 days ago,
Somebody
wow.
was dumb enough to pull a BB gun on Metro in a dark place such as a movie theater, and that didn't come out very
We had
well
a very
for them.
similar case to this here a few years ago at the opening of a cowboy movie here, in which they had everybody dressed up, and they had a fake gun battle in the parking lot with blanks, and it was not a good idea.
I understand. I used to manage movie theaters. I understand what they're trying to do here, but this is so dumb. I can't imagine. There's no other word for it. And the story was broken, incidentally. There's a side issue here by the Associated Press. And as we know, there's been recent stuff that Associated Press is having their phones tapped by the Obama administration in the names of national security. So maybe they caught this on their phone taps and could get Homeland Security down there to do something about the actors. The theater did apologize on its Facebook page and noted similar dress-up promotions have occurred at past movies. I agree, but perhaps the timing is just
And the
Too soon.
sensitivity.
It's just too close to recent events to be doing this.
Can you guys see any potential clients for traumatic?
Oh, there will be
all
lawsuits
kinds
from
of
this.
stuff, sure.
Somebody is going to file a lawsuit. They can never go to the movies again. They can't enjoy entertainment because of this experience.
And if they haven't thought of that yet, they just
Just
did.
did.
Call Mike.
Come to Las Vegas. We'll handle it. We'll federalize it. We'll go from here.
Creed and Giles. We will recognize that you have post-traumatic stress, which is a lifelong affliction, and now you can't have an assault rifle either. So there you are. We're going to break here for a little bit of capitalism. We will return in just a couple of moments with some more interesting stuff. Don't go away.
Are you able to protect your loved ones? We at the Gun Store have been helping Las Vegas residents equip themselves with home defense and personal safety products for over 25 years. We carry a full line of self-defense options, and our CCW concealed firearms permit class is free. Our other classes include ladies self-defense and free children's gun safety class. Our indoor range is open 7 days a week for you to try out some options and shoot a real machine gun. The Gun Store, located at 2900 East Tropicana Avenue.
And we are back here on Fired Up. Thanks for staying with us. We were just talking about this movie theater in wherever it was, in Missouri, that did the firing of blanks. Michael, you were...
Back in '89, I guess, when I was undergrad at UNLV, we were all sitting in the old Moyer Student Union that doesn't exist anymore, and there was this long, kind of windy staircase that went up to the second floor. And it was during that first couple of weeks of school where all the recruiters were out, and there was the table for the Navy and a table for the Army, a table for the Marines, and everybody was out there. A bunch of companies were out there, and in the middle of this, noon, lunchtime, we heard a shot go off upstairs. And the entire place went dead silent, and then the Marines jumped out from behind their table and started going up the stairs, and the uniformed officers from the school came running in and ran upstairs. Well, it turned out what had happened was somebody at the school had had a bunch of cowboy shooter reenactors come in for some event up in the ballroom area, and they had talked them into firing off a blank round up there. And it was just, again, not thought through real well. No one knew what was going on. It could have gone really badly there in the Moyer Student Union. It didn't, fortunately, but sometimes people don't give any thought to the reactions. Now, of course, '89, there aren't a lot of school shootings back then. It wasn't a topic of continuing conversation, but it's still the same subject. What do you think people are going to do if you produce a firearm or start firing shots? No one knows their blanks. Somebody could have gotten very dead, just like the guy with the BB gun, and you know.
And in today's society, you know, especially with the number of CCW permit holders growing, and the kinds of tragedies that we've seen, I wouldn't be surprised sometime that a CCW permit holder engages somebody that ends up in a further tragedy.
Yeah, that's an actor. And some years ago, before all the CCW holders, I used to do some movie work, and I was doing a job for the UNLV film department, and we were filming about 10 o'clock at night. We're making a movie, which was their project to make the whole movie, and it was about Hispanic gangbangers and how they see the light and become honest citizens at the end. And about 10 o'clock at night, we have a sequence where there's a whole bunch of gunfire, 6 or 7 shots. One gangbanger is killed by the other one. And they had notified, of course, the UNLV police. You know who else drives around the UNLV campus at night?
Cars, maybe? Yeah.
Are they black and white?
Brown uniforms.
Yeah.
And they come sliding in at 100 miles an hour, 2 units, and responding to, we're right behind that standard station. It's up on the corner of the university.
Fired.
They called it in. They thought it was somebody robbing somebody on the campus. And so we got units, and the guy actually jumped out with a shotgun, you know. And I've got the 3 or 4 actors that I have there that are armed. I've got everybody on the ground, set the gun next to you on the dirt, and, you know, da-da-da-da-da. Hi.
Very, very
guess
bad.
what? That's a problem in doing movies and these things. There are overlapping jurisdictions so many places. It never occurred to UNLV that the shots would carry beyond the campus. But we could, you know, the bus stop was like 75 feet away from where we were shooting. So
I was just wondering, did
them.
you get it on film?
The cars come in? Yes, they filmed that, yeah. And the movie eventually came out, and it was their project. It was like 3 or 4 years. But
We had the same thing.
Great
We were
movie.
doing old shoot, don't shoot movies, and we had our production crew was there with, you know, movie in progress, big signs, and same thing happened. You know, of course, we were in uniform and police cars and everything, and still people, you know, other cars rolled up and people were screaming, and we had, you know, well, it's a movie, but it's very bad. It's, you know, gunplay, no one dies. It's a good thing.
way worse today than it ever has
Oh, yeah,
been, I'm sure,
absolutely.
because of what's going on now, which is brings us back to the original story: is what were they thinking in Missouri to run that? But there we are, you know. So we're going to break here in just a minute and sell a few more items, hopefully. We've got a couple other stories we want to talk about before we get running out of time here tonight. But stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you able to protect your loved ones? We at the Gun Store have been helping Las Vegas residents equip themselves with home defense and personal safety products for over 25 years. We carry a full line of self-defense options, and our CCW concealed firearms permit class is free. Our other classes include ladies self-defense and free children's gun safety class. Our indoor range is open 7 days a week for you to try out some options and shoot a real machine gun. The Gun Store, located at 2900 East Tropicana Avenue.
And we are back. Thank you for staying tuned. We are here on Fired Up talking about some gun stories that this one is another one. I'm glad I'm surrounded by lawyers. Apparently, Washington, D.C. Has proposed a new law for the District of Columbia that anybody who wishes to license a gun in D.C. carry a $250,000 liability policy. One would think that this would be to cover them for somebody, if they shoot somebody accidentally or whatever. The way it's worded would mandate coverage for negligent and intentional acts not taken in self-defense. So self-defense is not covered. You've read through this, Michael.
Yeah, there have been several
Makes sense out of it.
several proposals. The first one was that gun owners fund a pool of money that would be used to pay for defray medical costs for those injured by the use of guns, regardless of who does it. This one is probably more along the lines of the traditional. You have to have if you want to have a gun in the district, you must have an insurance in case you do something and injure somebody. We don't get stuck with the bill. You have to pay for it. But then again, they exclude if you legally use the firearm. And of course, as most of your viewers are probably aware, getting a firearm license in the District of Columbia requires hundreds of dollars, takes months, if not up to a year. It was recently documented by a journalist back there by the name of Emily Miller. There are very few legally owned firearms in the district, and I'm not sure very many of them actually are used in crimes. When I read through one of the earlier proposals, maybe this actual proposal, they kind of addressed that issue by saying, it's not even if you misuse the firearm. If your firearm is stolen and remains in the district and gets used in a crime and we can tie it back to you, your insurance policy covers that shooting. So it's really fairly draconian. And of course, this is the other side of the coin we were just talking about. Now they're back to forcing somebody to purchase a product whether they want it or not. Yeah. And it is an infringement on the Second Amendment. So,
and I would hazard a guess that many of the firearms in Washington, D.C. are owned by criminals, yeah, or are carried by federal law enforcement.
Well, and they talk
who's
about
going to cover those guys?
Yeah, the detractors of this say, well, this isn't going to cover very much because most of the people who are doing the gun violence or whatever you want to call it, shooting people, are criminals. They're not going to go out and buy a $250,000 policy any more than they're going to register the firearm or follow the rules. So, it's been proposed elsewhere. It was proposed in Illinois. It was proposed in New York. This seems to be a trend, is that if we can't get rid of them, we're going to punish the owners of them.
The law-abiding owners.
The law-abiding owners, right.
I'm looking at this, and what I'm reading it kind of like homeowners insurance would be, that it doesn't cover intentional acts anyway, when it says it doesn't cover self-defense. So it only covers if you accidentally shoot your neighbor?
Apparently the way it's written, that's true, which is crazy because there are insurance agencies that will write you insurance that will cover an intentional act so long as it's a self-defense act. They're not going to pay off if you murder somebody in your home, but if you shoot someone, you're not charged with a crime, then they will pay to defend the civil suit. And so the district is basically saying, we don't want you to be able to, if you want to get that, get it on your own. We're going to make you get, so when you misbehave, the implication there, of course, is that you will misbehave with this firearm, right? Which I don't believe is supported by the statistics or anything related to crime in the District of Columbia. Now, they do have a serious crime problem in the District of Columbia. No. But firearms are virtually unheard of outside of federal agents and state officials and of the very few who are willing to jump through the hoops to buy a gun.
I wonder if it would apply to them because they
probably
are carrying the firearm.
I would imagine that they would be exempted because the firearm is part of their duties and therefore it's not a privately possessed firearm.
Should be interesting because, as you say, this puts all of the burden on the law-abiding citizen and does nothing to actually stop or
it'll make a bunch of insurance agents very happy because they'll sell policies and they'll never have to pay off on them.
Yeah.
Interesting. While we're addressing insurance, and every time it comes up, I want to mention on the air that if you have homeowners insurance and you're counting on that to defend you if you need to use your gun, check with your agent. Homeowners insurance often does not cover those intentional acts. They cover accidents, not on purposes. We'll be back after some commercials. Don't go away.
Are you tired of the same old routine? It's time to shake things up with a visit to the Pro Gun Club of Las Vegas. Located just 25 minutes from the Strip, Pro Gun Club offers 160 acres of space, featuring skeet shooting, rifle and handgun ranges. It's a great place to practice, and safety is always number one. Come anytime and enjoy the grounds, or ask about our membership. The Pro Gun Club is a great place to celebrate and respect your Second Amendment right. Spice up your leisure time with the Pro Gun Club. Call us at 293-2108 today.
And we are back here on Fired Up. Thanks for staying tuned in. I was going to digress off the map here just a little bit. When we were talking about insurance in the last segment, it reminded me that I wanted to give Michael Potter a few minutes to talk about gun trusts and what we call NFA trusts, National Firearms Act trusts. As everybody out there knows, there's a lot of stuff coming down the pike that maybe wants to prevent us from leaving our firearms to our heirs. Some of the assault weapons stuff currently, our modern military rifle stuff, the way the statutes are worded is you get to keep the gun, but when you die, it goes back to the government, and that's turning up in some of the state laws they're passing now too. And what firearms trusts do is try and protect you from that. If you want to
Exactly.
talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's very interesting that the National Firearms Act and the Gun Control Act that really covers the landscape in this deal with the transfer of certain types of firearms, Bob. Short-barreled shotguns, machine guns, suppressors, and so forth. And all of those types of firearms and their accessories that are covered, as you said, if you go through the steps to properly own and possess that item at your death, you assume that it can pass legally to your heirs. But that's not necessarily the case, and we see that laws seem to be headed towards making that a very restricted transfer, if not impossible. So the use of a firearms trust, having the trust own the firearm within the context of the law, allows the firearms owner to legally possess and then legally transfer, so long as the individuals who are the beneficiaries of that trust are not themselves felons and so forth. Right. So this can be an important topic, and we are seeing a lot of interest in that area. It certainly is right in keeping with my estate planning and asset protection work, but I do have a number of people that are looking at using that not only for these types of firearms, but even for non-NFA firearms, under the assumption that the laws are trending towards a even more restrictive environment.
Yeah, the wording of Feinstein's original bill says that these so-called assault weapons cannot be transferred upon your death. So the idea hopefully would work that the trust owns the guns, so the firearms aren't transferred, they're still owned by the trust. You just get a new trustee every generation or so.
And the other thing that comes up too, and I'm a bit worried about this, I'd be glad to what anybody else thinks about it, is, we were talking about that New York case where if you've got more than 7 rounds in a magazine, now you've got a assault magazine for a pistol. And these are the types of trends that I think people are legitimately worried about. And I would caution us to take some proactive steps to make sure that we protect ourselves, and this may be a way to do it.
They seem to be a very, very good idea. So I would encourage everybody out there that's paying attention. If you own more than a few guns, you certainly want to contact Mr. Potter's office. You can find that on our website, Fired Up with Bob. He's listed there, his contact information. Where you can find this, it's relatively inexpensive to do, and it may save your family a bundle and a lot of grief. They're evolving these laws as we're speaking, as you've heard on some of the things we've talked about. It's very, very tough to predict where these laws are going to go. We've got another one coming up we're going to talk about shortly also, but the difficulty in maintaining your family's stuff is becoming more and more difficult as our society seems to change, and this whole idea of everything belongs to everybody. And
it's important to have somebody competent, though, to do it, because we've had experiences with a few that they do it online themselves, and
big mistake.
The ATF has been rejecting them, and they look over them pretty well. So it's very important that you get somebody
very
really
specific legal wording that
needs
to be.
I mean, it's been a nightmare.
And sometimes people just assume that they can list their firearms in their living trust, for example, and that's going to cover them, and it does not.
We are out of time. Look forward to seeing you again next week. If you want to get involved in the show a little bit, we've got some ad space available to try and expand this show to an hour long. Appreciate if you would contact the show, and we will put you in touch with the right people. Thanks for checking in. We will see you next week.
Are you tired of the same old routine? It's time to shake things up with a visit to the Pro Gun Club of Las Vegas. Located just 25 minutes from the Strip, Pro Gun Club offers 160 acres of space, featuring skeet shooting, rifle and handgun ranges. It's a great place to practice, and safety is always number one. Come anytime and enjoy the grounds, or ask about our membership. The Pro Gun Club is a great place to celebrate and respect your Second Amendment right. Spice up your leisure time with the Pro Gun Club. Call us at 293-2108 today.